For the record, this is Thursday, September the 25th, 1997. My name is Dr. Bruce Thompson. I'm the instructor for History 214, the Civil Rights Movement. The class will be interviewing Mr. Lord Dunmore Nickens. Mr. Nickens is a veteran of the civil rights struggle here in Frederick County for the past 60-some years, we'll say. So we're honored to have him here today. Now, Mr. Nickens, for the record, do you understand you're being videotaped and audiotaped and that your memories belong to your belong to us? Thank you. Easy question.
Anything but me.
Right. Great. Well, good. We'll take First question. Can you just tell us about your family background and your family's arrival here in Frederick County?
My family goes back to before the Revolutionary War. And in this booklet here, Virginia Negro Soldiers and Sailors of the Revolutionary War. This book was published in 1941 and given to every black school teacher in the state of Virginia. In this booklet are 4 families, and one of those families are my families. My great-great-great-grandfather was on his way to Barbados and stopped off in the States. And he decided to stay in the States, and he settled in Virginia, Spotsylvania County. If you ever visit Spotsylvania County, in the courthouse there, you will find the same thing that's in this book. The 4 black families who fought and supported the movement in the United States to free themselves from the tyranny of the British standby and so forth. In this booklet, there are 9 of my great-great-uncles. So we go back quite a distance in this country. Although we haven't been given full credit as being a first-class citizen, and it's still that way, in a sense of speaking. And therefore, I felt as though, as a youngster, after being kicked in the butt at the Point Rock Station in 1919, December the 19th, when we moved, my immediate family moved from Virginia to Maryland by one of the conductors there, because at that particular time we didn't start school until we were 7 years old, and I was only 6. And I couldn't read, so I had to go to the restroom. And I walked into one that had a sign up there that says "Fight Only," not knowing what that was or anything. And the conductor grabbed me in the back of the collar and kicked me in the butt and kicked me out in the waiting room again. We could sit in the waiting room, but we could not go in to different sections of the waiting room. The Point Rock terminal is still standing. It's a memorial for the Beano Railroad now. And I remember it every time I go past that because I don't live too far. That started me at a young age of wondering what the difference was between colors and the texture of the hair. Because the place where we lived in Virginia, White Post, up next to Winchester, we had no trouble. And we moved to Luckett's, we had no trouble there. There were whites that were our neighbors, and we all slept, and if our parents cooked enough for everybody within the neighborhood, because we had these old open fireplaces. The fireplace, I guess, was half as big as from that wall over to here, with was big stanchions and everything, and way taller than what I was. And they cooked in pots, and they cooked a big pot full. Well, everybody from the neighborhood came in and ate. They all had gardens together and everything. So we all lived together, knew nothing about it until across the bridge of Warner Robins. Although Virginia was a southern state, and there were good people in Virginia, just as there are good people in Maryland. But just so happened that an unfortunate little boy couldn't read, but soon after that I learned to read and write, and I began to understand then what that so-called separate but equal doctrine meant to all of us, and that was enacted in 1896. That you can do the same things I do, but you don't have the revenue to do it with. So it's up to you to find a way to do it, but just keep out of my way. And that lasted clear up until 1954. I was, and growing up into the neighborhood, we had our own black schools. I went to the one school that was on the corner of Bench Street and Beavis Avenue up until the 6th grade, and then I was transferred to the 7th grade up to West 7th Street, where the Catholic, what is that, home is up there or something. And then it was, while we all had to get in line out in front of the school each morning to march in the school to our respective classrooms and teachers. And while we were there, the young white students would come up going to Washington Street School. And all the clouds would be coming up. It would be raining. The darkies are on their way in. The sun's going to come out. Or it was sunshine. Or boy. All kinds of names that you were called. And you had to endure this. For what reason? I would say. So I became bitter. I was a real bitter youngster. And I was bitter up until way after I came out of the service. I started to working at the age of 17 at Kemp's department store. And I was good at drawing. So the advertising manager asked the store owner about letting me print show cards. So I said, fine. And he asked about letting me dress mannequins in the window. And he said, fine. So I started printing show cards. That went along good with my other work that I was doing as janitor of the 3rd floor in the basement and working out to the boss's house in the time that I didn't have anything to do at the store. I was making good money. $5 a week. $5 a week. Some weeks they put in over 80 hours or more. And there was one lady in town, I won't call her name. She was a white lady. And she was very nosy. And I don't know whether she liked black people or not. They had blacks working for them. She said to the owner of the store one day, you're going to have to get rid of that little black boy, that's colored boy, we would call that. He calls it colored. I take that back. She did call it colored. That little colored boy that you have, dressing white mannequins in the window. He said, why? Because that'll give him inclination to grab white women. I wondered what the significance was. So I had to stop dressing white mannequins in the store window. But I continued to print show cards. And I continued to clean up and work out to the house. So one day I was on the way out to the house to work on Upper College Terrace. And they had started to work on Baker Park. Baker Park used to be a stockyard where Zacharias and Nicodemus kept their cattle. And we, as youngsters, would drive those cattle as far as Baltimore to the SK slaughterhouse for 10 cents an hour. And we'd walk down, drive the cattle, and they'd bring us back in our mobile. And as I was walking across from the bridge at Carroll Parkway over to Upper College Terrace, I had to walk either around the sidewalk all the way around, and the shortcut was to take the cement walk right straight from the bridge over to the swimming pool. So I got halfway and I heard the police whistle blowing, and I didn't stop. And this officer, and I hate to say this because I hate to be called dumb myself, and I hate to call other people dumb, but I must let you know that this was the dumbest officer on the police, precinct. He could not write his own name. And he asked me what my name was, write it on this piece of paper. So I wrote my name on the piece of paper, Lord D. Nickens. And he said, you're arrested for trespassing on city property. I went before the magistrate. I'm only making $5 a week, and he charged me $2.50 on my week's salary for trespassing on city property. Well, my boss got that back for me. He told him that I was working for him, and wherever I walked, that they had nothing to do with it. So they gave him his money back because he was very influential in the community. But now my father was a taxpayer. He owned his own property. He was paying taxes in the city. This is a good Frederick city. And one other thing was the former mayor at that particular time was very wise. And he lived on South Market Street. And the black, after they organized the sports segment within the city, one black, one white, one for black and one for white. I happened to be on the softball team that won the black championship at Mullins Park. And we had 6 teams in that league, and they had 6 in theirs. So we were to play the white champions to see who would be the city champions. We went to Lower Baker Park, where the band shell is now. And he let us warm up, but then he put a policeman at each base and he stood at pitcher's mound. And said, there'll be no mixed baseball here today over my dead body if you play. So they ran us off. But we didn't get to play Dr. Pepper for the city championship. All these things tied in with going to the peanut gallery and the movie theaters, not being allowed into the YMCA, and hardly allowed into the churches. If you went to church, some white person went along with you. And you think you have it rough today, you should be glad that Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP opened the doors for us. I know I am elated. And I have felt better ever since. After being laid off at Kemp's, I went to work for a lady by the name of Tina Walker. She made hats, millinery. And I delivered her hats for her all over Frederick. And the studio above was Fellows Rogers. So somehow or another he took a liking to me and said, Lord, if you would like to learn photography, he said, I'll teach you and I'll pay you while you're learning. So I said, fine, sure. So I worked at both places, delivering hats and going out on jobs with him, and then working in the studio, making prints. So we had a young girl that did all the retouching, and it was interesting. But then the war came along. Rumors Hitler was running rampant. You know how your blood boils, even though you have been stepped on and stood on just about all of your life up to that particular time. You feel as though you owe the country something to have to pay for the keeps under the Constitution. If you believed in the flag, you would look at the flag and say, I owe that flag something. No stars, no stripes. My people helped to build this country. Why should I shirk now? So I volunteered for the service. My qualifications were that I qualified for the Signal Corps. But there were no black units in the Signal Corps at that time. So they were going to activate a new brigade, 2 black units and 1 white unit. But that was something that was just on the paper at that particular time. So they sent me to Fort Huachuca, Kansas, and Fort Bragg for my basic training and SCTC training. After my SCTC training at the 41st Engineers, the 77th Coastal Artillery was activated. And I went to the 2nd Battalion of the 77th Coastal Artillery Brigade. Now we had 2 black outfits and 1 white outfit. The 72nd and the 73rd were black. The 74th was white. But we never came together. We never maneuvered together. And we would maneuver all over the southern part of the country with our big guns and our searchlights and our 37s, 50s, and 20 calibers, and our M1 rifles, and the new old Freegis had come out at that particular time. And we were using those. When we trained went in the Army to train, there was only 73 rifles that were fireable, that could be fired in the United States Army. And we were getting ready to declare war on Germany. We trained with tent pegs for for rifles and stovepipes for machine guns. But we were trained well. After we were on our way to go to Trinidad to fire our big guns because they had a 20-mile radius and they didn't want to hit any ships on the coast. And you couldn't fire them on land because we weren't in Arizona at the desert. That was taken up. And so we were able to going where we could set up along the coast and fire them at targets, sleep targets on airplanes, and sleep targets pulled by ships. I was on the 6th of December. We were in Florida, getting ready to board our ships to go to Trinidad. And the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. We were then rerouted from Florida all up the East Coast to have to form an iron ring around the East Coast. But there were two rings. There was a black iron ring and there was a white iron ring. And you had to, if you were black, you had to penetrate both of them in order to do your job. Prejudice was very rampant. Even with the white soldiers, prejudice was rampant. Because if you're a young man and you meet a young girl and you want to talk to her, I can't talk to you, you're an old soldier. You got a uniform on, your soldiers are no good. I don't know how long that took. It took the people to get over that back in the United States because we soon pulled out, headed for the Philippines to have General MacArthur because the Japanese were coming down by Ukapasistan. We got to Australia and we weren't allowed to, black troops weren't allowed in Australia. So they rerouted us to Indonesia. Still on board, President Roosevelt issued an order to the Australians that if black troops can't come onto your soil, then no soldiers will help to protect you from the Japs. So black soldiers began to debark in Australia. Now you must remember that Australia was almost founded like the United States was founded because of Phoenix. The British, the Pilgrims came to America. England then took the prisoners to Australia and put the prisoners out there. But yet, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. And what was so different between a black human being and a white human being. And science tells us that mutation has brought on the different colors. It refutes some parts of the Bible. That's why science and the Bible, scholars of the Bible don't get along together real good, because they refute each other, they dispute each other. It is said that in the Bible that Noah had 3 sons, Japheth, Seth, and Ham. And Ham was the black one with kinky hair. And he's the one that peeked in the tent on his father after his father had made wine and was inebriated, and he laughed at him. And if he was asleep or in a trance or drunk from wine, how did he see his son peeping at him? curse on you, that you and your descendants shall be last, as long as there's a universe. I'm still baffled at that. My father was a preacher for 89 of his 107 years, but he has never explained that to me. I'm still baffled. Science says that mutation has brought on.